Hey, welcome everyone. In this video, I'm doing a review of the PlayStation 5. The biggest talking point is its size, but we'll come back to that later. Another large item is the price for the consoles. There are two versions of the consoles available. A digital-only version, which is slightly cheaper and narrower than the one with the Blu-ray disc drive. I'm reviewing the Blu-ray version. It's pretty expensive, pretty much anywhere you live, especially here in Canada, it's $629 for the Blu-ray version that I have. Very expensive. It was no wonder why the digital-only version tends to sell out more often than the Blu-ray version. There has been some negative feedback from a lot of people on the internet regarding how the console looks, but I actually think it looks pretty cool and futuristic. The only thing I'm not a fan of is the two flaps that stick out at the top. This console is already huge and having this part stick out doesn't help. Which leads into my next point, the size of the console. It's massive and even staggers above the Xbox Series X, and that's not a good thing. Just looking at the specs on paper, the Xbox Series X is actually slightly faster than the PS5. So the question lingers, if the Xbox Series X is slightly more powerful but more compact in body's design, at least in terms of height, couldn't Sony have done a similar thing with their PlayStation 5? Standing the PS5 vertically in a home theater system is near impossible for most people. There is a simple plastic clamp that allows you to place it on its side, but even then it still might be too large for some setups. And that plastic clamp to hold the console flat can actually be used to hold the console vertically for additional support. You don't have to use it, but it's optional. It's just that that stand is incredibly flimsy and cheap feeling, and to set it up vertically is more complicated than it should be. Going back to the console, at the front there's a USB-A port with high-speed data transfer rate, a USB-C port that's super speed, a power and eject button. Continuing on the back, at the top there's a lot of ventilation for where warm air is pushed out of the system to keep cool, and continuing on there are two USB-A super speed ports as well as ports for Ethernet, HDMI 2.1 and power. The system runs rather cool, and when being pushed to its limit with games such as Dark Souls, only warm air gets exhausted out of the back, never hot air, which is great. In addition to that, the fan is incredibly quiet. Let's take a listen. This system does support Wi-Fi 6, and it does come with Bluetooth, but there's a huge catch. You can connect Bluetooth devices such as a mouse, but you can't connect audio Bluetooth devices, so you can't connect a wireless Bluetooth headset for private listening. This feature seems to be disabled for some reason within the console, and that even means some of the premium Sony headphones with Bluetooth capability can't be paired with this. The only way to get wireless headphone support right now is to get the 3D headset from Sony itself, or if you want to get a wired connection, you have to plug it in with a 3.5mm jack into the controller itself. So basically Sony disabling Bluetooth audio support was completely lame and uncalled for. Let's switch over to one of my favorite new things, the DualSense controller, which has a very similar button layout as the DualShock 4 controller, but a lot of it has also been overhauled at the same time. The new controller has a clean white design with a similar futuristic look as the console. The texture of the controller also feels smoother than the DualShock 4 to hold, and thankfully that also means it's pretty comfortable to hold in the hand. However, the vibration design built into the controller is probably my favorite part out of the entire contents of the box, even over the console in some areas. It's hard to explain over video, but it's like Sony put some sort of magic within the controller to make games feel more immersive and real. There's a free game that comes pre-installed on the console, Astro, which is basically a game designed to show off the potential of the controller, and it works wonderfully. The game is pretty cute and fun to play and shows a history of the PlayStation consoles, but the way it demonstrates the potential of the controller is just crazy awesome. Even other games, if they're designed and optimized well for the controller, like say for example while playing Spider-Man Miles Morales, depending on the type of web shot out of his hands, the controller will adapt its vibration intensity, but it goes beyond that. At the beginning of the game, when the subway comes to a stop, it feels real in your hand, as if I was Miles holding onto the subway rail and I could feel the subway coming to a stop. Just a few seconds later, you'll see Miles walking down the street and a bus will pass him on the screen going from left to right. And so the controller will actually vibrate in the direction of left to right, as if you can actually feel the bus passing through the controller itself. Again, what Sony has accomplished here is absolutely incredible, and it gives developers a lot of potential to do some amazing things. I know it sounds crazy, but you really have to feel it in person to truly understand and appreciate just how good of a job Sony has done here. This amazing vibration technology comes at a cost. The battery runs out quickly. It'll last you about 8 hours of gameplay, but thankfully the controller is rechargeable through its USB-C port and you can just connect it straight into the console. Setting up the console was incredibly easy and only took a couple of minutes. Once you're done, you're greeted with the new interface. It's similar to what you would find on the PlayStation 4 consoles, but not as blue. It's darker and even more minimalistic, with the division of apps and games being organized separately. Which means Sony didn't change things up too much, especially like the settings menu looks very familiar, but the main interface, aside from the colors and the organization slightly tweaked, if you're coming from a PlayStation 4 console, you'll feel right at home. Pressing the PlayStation button on the controller brings up a new menu at the bottom of the screen for items such as your online status, status of friends, cards for new game items, and a cool feature called Game Help, which basically gives you written, picture, or video hints of a particular part of a game level you're on. If you need help, for example, to get past a certain puzzle or part of the level that's tricky. This means instead of you going to your tablet or phone for help, you can do it straight from your TV. Now, this is still a work in progress from developers and Sony, so not all games will have those features and game helps just yet, but give it time and there could be a lot of potential here. But that's pretty much it for the interface. There's nothing new and exciting here, which is surprising for an interface that was completely redesigned according to Sony. Now, I do understand the Xbox Series X, which I have reviewed, a link to that is in the video description. Microsoft kept things almost identical to the Xbox One interface, except they added some really cool features that took potential of the SSD in the console, such as Quick Resume, which allows you to quickly switch between your most previous handful of games without having to go to the main menu of each game. The PlayStation 5 can't do that. So even if I'm playing a video game and I want to open something very tiny, such as the Media Player app, which allows me to play, pictures or videos, even recordings from the console itself, I have to exit my game completely to open up this Media Player app and start playing my content. I'm not sure why a console this powerful needs to shut down the game completely, but with the Series X, it can get past that issue easily. If the game is designed well, graphics look incredible, frame rates are amazing, and the use of ray tracing is stunning. Moving on to gaming, there aren't many exclusives at launch, except for hyped up titles such as Demon's Souls and Spider-Man Miles Morales, but the latter is also available on PlayStation 4. As I mentioned earlier, inside the console is an SSD which allows for better game performance and faster load time. This allows games to be potentially played at 4K 60 frames a second HDR. In some rare cases, it might be possible to play games in 4K 120 frames per second, but that could mean sacrificing on graphics. I recommend sticking to 4K 60 frames a second as the perfect balance between graphics and frame rate. But there's yet a third possible option, and that's 4K gaming at 30 frames per second if the graphics are pushed really hard to the console's max potential. But that usually comes at a great benefit, which is ray tracing. What that basically means in a nutshell is that you can have better lighting effects, you can have more reflection in water and puddles of your game character, or even random NPCs walking around. The PS5 is backwards compatible with 99% of PS4 games. This means games like God of War 4 from 2018 can be finally played at max graphics at 60 frames per second. This is how I wish I could have originally played it, because it's absolutely stunning on PS5 with max graphics and an increased frame rate. But that doesn't mean every PS4 game on the PS5 will have 60 frames a second. It really depends on the developer of the game wanting to implement that type of feature in the game. Backwards compatibility with games from PS3 and older can't be done natively from the console. You'll have to register for the PlayStation Now game streaming service or hope that older games were remastered for the PS4, such as God of War III Remastered. One more note comparing the PS4 to the PS5 is load time. Booting up the console has never been faster, and game load time is absolutely incredible. It's great going to an SSD console. You'll never want to go to a hard drive console like the PS4 ever again. It's not all good news with the SSD. Out of the box and after installing a mandatory patch, the user only has 666 gigabytes of space to use. Considering that AAA titles average 70 gigs or up, you could run out of space really quickly. To make things worse, connecting an external drive only supports PlayStation 4 games, no PS5 games yet. Unless of course that changes with the patch or firmware update. Unfortunately, the CEO of PlayStation, Jim Ryan, in a statement basically said there's no issue with the storage at this time, which is not the best statement he could have made on behalf of customers such as myself. People always want the option of more storage, never a cap. As a media player, it does a pretty decent job. You can get apps such as Netflix, YouTube, and Amazon Prime, and they all work pretty well at playing 4K content and HDR. There are additional apps such as Disney+, Apple TV, and even Hulu. Depending on the region you live in, you can install and download them. Out of all the media player apps, the biggest disappointment is Plex. It's just incredibly horrible. Playing content over my network is just absolutely horrendous. It's always stuck in buffering. My Nvidia Shield, which I've also reviewed, linked to that in the video description, plays everything buttery smooth. This is not a problem with PlayStation 5 at all. The console's more than powerful enough to handle it, it's just that the Plex app was poorly designed for this console. For audio and video playback, it's a mixed bag. It supports HDR10, Dolby True HD, and DTS HD Master Audio, but it does not seem to support Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, or DTS-X. Sony says that their proprietary audio engine called Tempest will provide 3D audio, but is currently only supported by the sold separately Pulse 3D wireless headset, which costs $99 US. That means, at least for today, if you have a very expensive home theater set worth a few $1,000s, you can't take advantage of PlayStation 5's 3D audio technology. Look, the PlayStation 5 is a superb console. It comes down to the huge price tag and some of the caveats that come with the system. It has superb graphics, amazing load time, some super awesome exclusives, and that controller vibration design is stellar. The engineering team, all of them need to get a promotion or a raise. But with this huge price tag, super oversized body, limited storage space, and Sony executives even saying it's not a big deal, and Bluetooth built in, but you can't use it for audio support, it makes absolutely no sense. So should Sony have priced it this expensive as a console? No. Is it a bad console? No, it's stellar. It's just that the price just seems a little bit high. But that's pretty much a wrap from me. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out my social links in the video description, and thanks for watching.